My name is Emily. I have a husband and a son named Richard, who has reached adulthood. A few years ago, my son moved out. Now, my husband and I live together in a spacious house. At first, I felt lonely after my son left, but now I'm used to it. However, I'm always happy when I get a call from him saying he's coming home. On the day my son was coming home, my husband and I were excited from the morning. It was before our son told us,
I want you both to be at home because I have someone I want to introduce.
Before noon, my son came home with a lovely woman. I had expected it from his words, but I never thought he would actually bring a woman home. Seeing our surprise, my son proudly introduced her.
Her name is Karen. Isn't she cute? She's my proud wife.
I couldn't understand my son's words right away. After thinking for a moment, I asked again, Richard, did you just call Karen your wife, not your girlfriend? My son nodded in agreement.
I did. Maybe you're going deaf, Mom?
I couldn't laugh back at my son's teasing laughter. I haven't heard about you getting married. Did you know about this? I asked my husband and he shook his head.
No, I didn't hear about it either.
My husband and I asked our son what's going on. Then, for some reason, our son proudly explained,
That's why I came to announce our marriage registration today. By the way, we had a grand wedding in Bali with friends.
My husband and I were speechless at this unexpected explanation. Our son, oblivious to our reaction, kept talking about how wonderful the wedding in Bali was. I held my aching head and carefully asked my son, You have already registered and had the wedding? Why weren't we invited? Then Karen, who had been silent, spoke up. Do we need to invite strangers? I was shocked by her unexpected words. Karen calmly said, Isn't it a waste of money? I couldn't help but respond emotionally. No, we are Richard's parents. Karen seemed unconvinced and said with a dissatisfied look, But you're strangers to me. I was confused and fell silent. My son must have finally noticed the tense atmosphere and began to explain hurriedly.
Karen has no parents or siblings. It would be sad if she was the only one without family at the wedding, right? That's why I didn't invite you guys.
Hearing Karen's situation, I couldn't say anything back. I thought, if that's the case, maybe it can be helped. Of course, I wasn't completely satisfied, but I told myself it was too late since the wedding was already over. After the newlyweds left, I confided in my husband. I wonder if those two will be okay. My husband seemed to share my concern, but said,
It's their decision. They're already married. All we can do is watch over them,
and sighed. Although I agreed with my husband's opinion, I couldn't leave it at that, so I decided to try to close the distance with Karen. I got my son's phone number and decided to get in touch. When Karen realized it was me on the phone, her voice immediately turned sour. What do you want? I thought I had made her uncomfortable by calling out of the blue, so I quickly explained my reason. I got some delicious treats, so I thought I'd bring them over to you next time. Then Karen said, Oh, I don't need that. In fact, I don't even plan to give you my address. I couldn't help but ask, What? Karen calmly answered, I don't want to give personal information to strangers. Please, delete my phone number. Before I could say anything else, the call was disconnected. After that, I couldn't get in touch with Karen. What I did must have been an unnecessary intrusion to Karen. Feeling down, my husband told me,
There's still time. Don't rush. Forcing closeness won't necessarily lead to good results. Just hope that she'll open her heart to us someday.
I cooled my head and nodded. You're right. A month after I stopped trying to contact my son and his wife, my son suddenly got in touch. What's going on? I asked, and he told me Karen was pregnant. I was thrilled by the happy news. I thought it would be tough for a first-time mother without her parents, so I asked for their address to go help. But my son said,
No, I can't give you the address. We don't need help, just money. Give me your bank account number so I'll transfer it.
I tried to explain to my son how difficult childbirth could be, but he wouldn't listen. Moreover, he said that Karen herself was against it. In the end, I transferred only the money as my son wanted. After that, I never heard from my son again. There was not even a report of the child's birth. After a year had passed, I tried to call my son several times, but eventually, I couldn't reach him at all. My son may no longer think of us as family. Even if I want to confirm it, there's no way to get in touch. Feeling helpless one day, I met a familiar person at the local supermarket. At first, I didn't recognize him, but thanks to him calling out to me, I realized who he was.
It's been a long time. Do you remember me? I'm David. Johnson's David?
Hearing the name, my memory came back. He was a friend my son often brought home during high school. I didn't recognize him at first because he was still a high school student in my memory. David, you've grown up so well. As I looked at him closely and called his name, David seemed pleased and a bit shy. Suddenly, I caught the eye of the woman next to David. She had a matching ring with David and her belly was noticeably large. I involuntarily covered my mouth and exclaimed, "Oh my!" David nodded shyly.
This is my wife Olivia. Our child is due in 2 months.
Olivia, is it? Congratulations. Thank you. Olivia looked confused for a moment but soon smiled happily. After brief greetings, we quickly parted ways, not wanting to burden the expectant mother. 2 months after reuniting with David, I received an email from him. In fact, we had exchanged contact information at the time of our reunion because he wanted to announce the birth. Attached to the email was a picture of the newborn baby. It was a very cute baby. Suddenly, I imagined my own grandchild, whom I had never seen, and shed a few tears. I emailed David saying I wanted to send a gift to celebrate. Then, a flustered David called me.
I didn't contact you with that intention, so please don't trouble yourself.
I couldn't help but laugh at David's apologetic tone. That's not it. I just want to celebrate since I can't do anything for my own grandchild. David was silent for a while before asking,
Something happened with Richard, didn't it?
As I remained silent, David began to speak.
I was hesitant to tell you this, but actually,
David's story was shocking.
Olivia was originally Richard's girlfriend, but Richard chose another woman and unilaterally dumped Olivia. That woman was Karen. Olivia was devastated after being abandoned by Richard. I couldn't leave her like that. I tried to persuade Richard several times, but he wouldn't listen. I gave up trying to convince him and stopped being friends with him.
David's story ended there for the moment. I thought I couldn't forgive my son or Karen, even if he was my own child. At the same time, I realized that my actions had reminded Olivia of her painful past. Even though I didn't know I did something terrible to Olivia, she probably didn't want to meet Richard's mother. I'm really sorry for casually saying I wanted to celebrate it. When I apologized, David hurriedly denied it.
You don't need to apologize, Mrs. Smith. Olivia doesn't mind. She was the one who wanted to send the baby's picture. Please, don't apologize, Mrs. Smith.
I felt even more guilty at their kindness. David hesitated and then said,
I just don't want to involve Olivia with Richard and his wife ever again.
I agreed wholeheartedly. I'll help as much as I can. Though there may not be much I can do, I also revealed to David my relationship with my son and his wife. David was truly appalled to learn of Richard's recent behavior. Afterward, we changed the subject and only talked about cheerful things before hanging up. I told my husband about what I had heard from David. Then I informed him that I would consider Richard and his family as strangers from now on. My husband agreed with me. At least we can take a breather. I looked around the room where most of the unpacking was done and nodded. Our new life begins here today. Originally, the house we had lived in was too large just for the two of us. When we were considering moving, we were introduced to this newly built high-rise condominium. We were supposed to tell our son about it, but we decided against it. I decided to go out to buy ingredients for dinner. The moment I stepped out of the front door, someone called out to me, "Mom?" I turned around thinking it couldn't be, and there was my son. He approached with a light smile.
Why did you tell me you moved? I was surprised to find strangers at the old house. I had to search quite a bit to find you.
I looked at my son with stern eyes. I didn't need to tell you. You're a stranger to me. Richard finally seemed to realize that my attitude had changed and became flustered.
What are you talking about? I'm your son.
I ignored Richard and started walking. Richard hurriedly walked beside me and began to talk.
Mom, I'll apologize for everything up until now. I was just deceived by Karen. You must have some extra money if you're living in a new high-rise condominium like this, right?
Richard was making a fuss beside me, but I ignored him and kept walking. Seeing my unchanging attitude, Richard seemed to think the situation was bad and began to speak anxiously.
Karen was a habitual liar. Her claim of having no family was a lie. She had only been disowned by her parents after causing a romantic problem at her previous job.
When I glanced at my son, he misunderstood something and continued to badmouth Karen.
Karen approached me for money when she couldn't live alone after quitting her job. I was just deceived.
My son insisted he was the victim.
So let me live in that high-rise condominium too?
I stopped and looked at my son's face. He seemed happy, thinking I was finally willing to listen. But I kept my stern eyes on Richard and said, "You chose that wicked woman even though you were dating someone else. It's the result of your actions." My son was astonished at my words. I delivered the decisive words to my son. "Your only family is Karen. You two are a perfect match." Leaving my son standing there, I left the scene. I then contacted David. I thought my son might cause trouble for David or Olivia. Sure enough, my son tried to apologize to Olivia and asked David to mediate between us. Moreover, he said something nonsensical like,
"You two got married because of me."
David, at his wits' end, declared he was cutting ties with my son and threatened to call the police if he persisted. My son apparently fled in a panic. Afterwards, my furious son tried to spread bad rumors about the two among common friends, but was instead scorned by them. Karen, who was supposed to be my son's only ally, ran away with another man, leaving their child behind as soon as she spent all my son's savings. Afterward, my son fell into a terrible state, but we didn't think of helping him even after hearing the rumors. After a while, my son came to us with the child.
"You must think it's pitiful for your grandchild, right? Let us stay here."
As soon as my son spoke, my husband, who had been silent until then, yelled,
"Don't be ridiculous. Stop acting like a spoiled child at your age. You're no longer our son but a stranger. Get out."
Frightened by our harsh attitude, my son left the grandchild and ran away. My husband quickly locked the front door. I gently picked up the grandchild who had been left behind. The grandchild, not understanding anything, reached out to my husband with a smile. I'm sure that seeing that smile, my husband and I shared the same thought. We have no intention of forgiving our son and Karen in the future, but the child is innocent. We nodded to each other. We decided to raise this child ourselves. I heard rumors that my son is doing physical labor. He must be struggling to make ends meet, having to choose a job he hates involving physical work. Even so, he hasn't tried to force his way back home for now. Well, even if he did, the result would be the same. My husband and I are busy every day focusing on our grandchild. We're not young anymore, so raising a child is quite challenging. But just seeing this child smile gives us the strength to persevere. For things that are too difficult for us, we rely on the help of David and his wife. We can't thank them enough. It seems that the days of enjoying a leisurely retirement are still a way off. But until then, I want to cherish the time with my husband and grandchild.